Well, from America's election headquarters, presidential politics, and 4 questions for the next 4 years, a regular segment giving you a chance to ask White House candidates about issues that most concern you. Today, I'm joined by former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, who spent a lot of time in Iowa, where he edged Mitt Romney for a win back in 2012. And, Senator, it's great to have you back on the program with us, and our viewers have a lot of great questions for you. So just to point out to our viewers and to you as well, Senator, we picked 4, but we have a lot more than 4. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can, and our viewers can continue to tweet us and join the live chat and follow up with anything that you have to say. So this is always a lot of fun. I like to remind myself that you're the father of 7 kids, and all families out there in America really have a question about what does this country look like for the next generation. Greg had this great question. He said, isn't bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States a pipe dream? What's the plan? That's interesting considering the state you're from. Senator, how would you answer that question?
Well, I actually announced for president on a factory floor saying I was going to make America the #1 manufacturing country in the world. And look, the reason we're losing manufacturing jobs is because of our tax policy, our regulatory policy, our litigation policies, our trade policies, all of those things. It's not that Americans can't compete. We have innovation. We have great hard workers. We have folks who can accomplish a lot. This government has just made it impossible. So that's why I put together a plan. I introduced it last Monday that makes us competitive in our tax rate, competitive in our expensing provision. So we really encourage manufacturers because we allow full expensing, which is really important for them. We have a repatriation provision that says that the $2 trillion that's sitting overseas in banks by manufacturers who made products overseas, we're going to get that money back in this country to be reinvested in plant and equipment. We're going to have a policy of trade that's going to say, yes, we're for free trade, but we want to make sure that American manufacturers can compete. So if you look at all these different things, regulatory environment, I've already said I'm going to repeal every single Obama regulation that costs manufacturers more than $100 million a year. You start putting the government allowing manufacturers to compete on a level playing field, we'll get those jobs back and then some.
So how feasible is that? Do you need the Democrats to help you with that? Is this President Santorum? Where do you start? Because you mentioned a lot of different policies and regulations that need to get changed. What's the #1 priority, and how do you get the other side to come along with you?
Yeah, we put together an economic plan that is focused on making America #1 manufacturer. Now, think about it. If you come from a state like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, you look at all these states that have lost manufacturing jobs, that are really affecting people, having a difficult time rising and getting good paying jobs. And you have a president out there saying, we're going to make America the #1 manufacturer again. And you're a Democrat sitting in that congressional district or sitting in that state, and you're saying, nah, we don't want to get involved with that. We're going to engage people in a bipartisan effort to try to make America a country that makes things again and puts workers to work in good paying jobs. And I can assure you there's going to be a lot of bipartisan support to do that.
A lot of questions, of course, about the domestic economy, but we also have a lot of questions when it comes to national security as well. I know you have the honor, and I'm being a little sarcastic here, of being directly quoted or referred to by ISIS in a recent publication. And so we have some great questions from our viewers about how to keep this country safe. I have to take a quick commercial break, Senator, but we'll be right back with those questions in just a moment. Back now with former Pennsylvania Senator and Republican presidential candidate Rick Santorum taking your questions for the next 4 years. So, Senator, one of the big news items of today is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is in Iraq. Suddenly, we woke up this morning, he's on the ground in Iraq. And General Dunford, one of the reasons why he's there, supposedly, is to make it clear that there should be no Russian intervention inside Iraq. We have a lot of questions when it comes to Islamic extremism. Alexandra, as well as Joshua, had this question. What's priority #1 when it comes to battling or combating Islamic extremism, in your opinion?
Well, I think #1 is Iran. Iran is the principal sponsor of terror. They are the ones who are on a pathway, thanks to this president, to a nuclear weapon, and we have to take them off that path. The president has set forth a policy that's going to lead to a war, a big war, a war that's going to be very dangerous, not just for Israel, who, as you know, the Iranians have said they want to wipe off the face of the earth, but also for this country and for the West. And I've been committed back when I was in the United States Senate and authored the bill to put the original sanctions on Iran back in 2004 and 2005, to making sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon. As president, that will be my highest priority, to make sure that Iran dismantles their nuclear capability and does not get a weapon that will lead us to a very, very dangerous and costly war.
What do you think is the #1 mistake that this administration has made when it comes to national security?
You can't make a bigger mistake than jeopardizing the existence of your country. And I think that's what President Obama did when he signed this agreement to give Iran a pathway to a nuclear weapon. This is a country that is ruled by a bunch of theocrats, people who believe that the end of the world is coming and that they have a role to play in the end of the world and to bring about their savior. I call it apocalyptic Islam. They're a radical sect, but they happen to control Iran, and they happen to be on a pathway to getting a weapon that could bring about their doomsday scenario. We cannot allow that to happen, and the President of the United States did something that is not just dangerous for, I said, our ally Israel, but dangerous for the entire world.
I want to turn back to some domestic politics as well. You've played a lot of different roles. You've served as a congressman, as a senator, obviously a presidential candidate as well. And a question from PJ about just the way things work in Washington. He wanted to know, how did you negotiate with Democrats while in office, because you were able to maintain your stature as a conservative? And can you provide any examples of how you did that?
Yeah, probably the best example is welfare reform, which conservatives hail as the greatest conservative accomplishment in the last 25 years. I wrote the bill when I was in the House on the Ways and Means Committee, and when I came to the Senate, I managed the bill on the floor of the Senate. President Clinton vetoed that bill twice, and we had to sit down and negotiate over and over again and make concessions. But here's what I learned. There are good compromises and bad compromises. A good compromise is actually getting less of a good thing. But as long as it's a good thing, it's a good compromise. A bad compromise, and Republicans over the years have entered into far too many of this, is that we get less of a bad thing and we think, oh, that's good because it's not as bad as it could have been. No, that's not a good compromise. You don't go along with that. Welfare reform was a good compromise. We ended the federal entitlement. We block granted to the states. We actually cut the amount of money and froze it over a 10-year period of time. We required work, and we put a time limit on welfare. Welfare rolls dropped in half. Employment went up. Poverty levels went to the lowest level ever. And that's understanding what good leadership is about. And we negotiated. And what I did, I can tell you, conservative groups in Washington, D.C., many of them vilified me for making these compromises. And those same groups now say that it was the greatest conservative accomplishment ever.
Let me just ask you,
so you have to know your convictions.
Let me ask you quickly. I have a final question, but quickly on this. Where do you think the Republican Party has gone wrong on that? Because you're criticizing the way that some of them are negotiating now. Why? Like, where do you think that they went down the wrong path?
Well, I think they went down the wrong path, number one, by refusing to fight on some of the issues that are important to this country. Everything from what the president did on immigration to most recently on Planned Parenthood. But the point is, you got to be smart. You have to have a game plan. You have to be able to go to the people that are in your party and, frankly, in the other party who may be uncomfortable with some of these things. For example, the president's abuse of power in immigration, or the Planned Parenthood and these horrible videos that we saw. Go to them and say, okay, what can we do? What can we accomplish? What good thing can we get done? Instead of just saying, here's what we have to do, and if you don't do anything but this, you're not a conservative. That doesn't solve anything.
You're talking about strategic vision, which is something that we'd like to end on. We have a lot of viewers asking questions about poll numbers. We're going to show a few on our screens, but I'm going to kind of move through them. We know where the poll numbers are. The question for you is, what's next? Senator, tell us about the game plan for the next several weeks and months.
Well, I've been through this before. I ran 4 years ago. Yesterday, there was a poll. Yesterday, 4 years ago, a CBS poll came out. It had me at 1% nationally, and I ended up winning 11 states, including the Iowa caucuses, 2.5 months after that poll came out. In fact, 2 weeks before the Iowa caucuses, I was at 2% in the national polls. So I don't really pay much attention to those. I learned 4 years ago they really don't matter much. You have to really work hard in the early primary states, build your base of support there, and you know what? Be second on a lot of people's lists. Be third even on some people's lists, because what you find when the people get closer to Election Day and the folks that they say they're for, they find out maybe all the glitters is not gold, and they look for their second or third choice, and that's where we want to be, and that's what we're working very hard on doing, and that's why I feel very, very confident we're going to surprise a lot of people again in Iowa. Interesting
historical context for us and important for us to consider. By the way, the last time around, I remember a lot of talk about a sweater vest. You're not wearing that. Are you past that? Is that vintage because that's 4 years ago, or where are you with that?
We're having some family discussions about that. I have a teenage daughter who's 17 who's trying to give me fashion advice. And I've told her, look, the sweater vest is still there. I said, unless you can come up with something that's equally as as iconic,
right,
then we may have to go back. But right now, no decision made.
Okay, fair point. A family decision. We understand when it comes to fashion, we all have to consult who we have to consult.
Particularly your daughters. Particularly your daughters.
Senator, a pleasure to have you. We look forward to having you back and answering some more questions. Thank you so much for the time today.
Appreciate it.